Hi, friend. I am still on hiatus, taking a break. So, in this episode, I want to run it back to the beginning. You're about to listen to the very first interview I did on the podcast. My guest was Coach Anna McCoy. It was an insightful conversation, and I came away with some profound revelations, and I even got coached live on the show, on my own podcast. The interview was in 2 parts. This is a replay of the first part. I'll leave a link to part 2 in the show notes if you want to listen to it. Let's get into it. You're listening to the Driven Introvert podcast, the place to be for dreamers, doers, and entrepreneurs who are ready to birth the dreams, callings, and ideas the Lord has placed in their hearts. Do you sense that God is calling you to step out and do something new, but you're held back by fear and uncertainty? Do you struggle with believing that you can do great things because of your quiet, reserved, and introverted nature? Welcome here. I'm Remy Roy, your host and founder of shepacked.com. I'm an author, an entrepreneur, a creative, and a committed trier. I'm here to help you get unstuck and make progress on your God idea. Let's go. In today's episode, I'm bringing you a conversation with Coach Anna McCoy. She's a speaker, a coach, obviously, a personal development specialist, an entrepreneur, and a creative genius. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I've been blessed to be connected with Coach Anna for a little over 10 years now, and all I can say is she is a powerful force. She's been a tremendous influence in my life, given me opportunities, spoken life over me, and given me very specific guidance as my coach. And I'm beyond excited to dive into this conversation. I know that you'll be blessed, encouraged, and challenged to develop your confidence and continue to pursue your God-given purpose. We discuss what it means to develop and work in your inner confidence and the power of empathy and practice in showing up as a self-assured woman. We delve into the power of AI, yes, and how it can drastically improve your workflow and output as a woman in business. We also talk about why the exercise of envisioning your ideal scene is crucial to achieving your goals and big ideas. Let's go. Hi, Coach Anna. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Remy. I'm glad to be here with you all.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. This is the first guest interview we're doing on the podcast. And yeah, I know it's going to be a great conversation. So I'm excited to dive into it. I want to start with just a trip down memory lane, right? I think about the first time that we met. It's so funny. I think it was sometime in 2011 or 2012, if I remember correctly. That was when you came to Nigeria for a conference I was working at the time. Yes, with Sister B. And I remember that because some of the team members came to the airport to, get you from the airport. And I remember pictures from that. And I remember thinking, oh my God, who is this woman? Because I saw one of the pictures, you were wearing like cargo pants and like a white shirt. And you were doing I think in this particular picture, you did the Usain Bolt pose.
Yes.
I was mind blown because I was like, who is this person? I mean, you have to understand, I grew up in a culture that we're pretty formal. Yeah, we're pretty formal in my culture. And if you are a certain age, you expected to behave, accordingly, so to speak. So you blew all of that out of the water with your energy. And I was so, I don't even know what word to describe how I felt. And I remember coming to the hotel room and meeting you for the first time. And, you greeted everyone and you gave me a hug. And I remember just thinking, I don't remember the words that you said, but I remember how I felt. I remember the presence, your presence at that time. And I couldn't help but think, oh my God, this is an amazing woman, number one. But I did a comparison there. And this comparison that I did, it's not a sad one, but I just felt like, how do I become this woman? And when I say this woman, I didn't mean you, because thank God I had the presence of mind at that time to know that I'm not trying to be anyone else, but because seeing you're confident and seeing you as somebody at the time, it was so clear to me that you were self-assured. You knew who you were. Like you were like a round peg in a round hole. Like you got it, And I was thinking, how do I become that person? how do I figure out who I want to be and how do I get there? Like, I could see that my reality at that time was so far removed from the expectation that I had for myself, you know? And
Yes.
I could see that difference. And it was such a difficult time for me because I was young-ish. I wasn't that young. And
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, confident. I was very
Mm-hmm.
uncertain. I had a lot of insecurities, and I still do. Newsflash. So I think about that, and I guess my question right off the bat for you is: did you ever feel like me? Like I felt at that time. Was there ever a time where you felt like the reality of who you were, your confidence as a woman, wasn't really measuring up to the expectations, and you knew you had a long way to go to be the woman you wanted to be?
I would have to say, I have this thing about myself where I feel like, or maybe I tell myself, that there is nothing, there is no situation, there is no person in the world that I would be afraid to be in presence with. Right now, this is interesting because I mean, I learned at a very early age, and I had great mentors, right? And probably maybe even prior to that, when we think about confidence, I've always felt like I was a confident person. Like I just wasn't afraid. And I think confidence, when we think about it, it's connected to fear, right? Because
Hmm.
confidence are the things we do at a specific moment. It isn't something that we do the same every time we face a moment. And I think for me as a young girl, I never really felt a lack of confidence. I don't even know honestly what that feels like unless I'm afraid in the moment, right? So that's the first thing. And it's not like I haven't had challenges because we certainly will talk about those, but they're usually not in the way of me ever feeling that way. I felt an impact on my confidence when I wrote in my book, Woman Act Now, two things that happened to me as a young girl that we would probably say shattered that confidence, right? And that was I had a physical challenge or a medical issue with having Bell palsy or strokes at the age of 9 and at the age of around 13 or 14. So in both of those cases, I felt less than because you could see it on the outside rather than who I was on the inside. But who I was on the inside, I think my mom was an amazing woman. My father was an amazing dad, and they let me. I don't know. I probably came here this way. They would probably tell you she was different. You know what I'm saying? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be my initial response to that. I don't want to get ahead of us, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that because when you mentioned that confidence is connected to fear, that's been my
Mhm.
experience. I feel like we're on different,
Mhm.
sides of the coin here, and this is great. I
Yeah.
think that's what makes for a good conversation because I really want to learn from you. My experience has been that there's this almost like a background hum of
Mhm.
of fear
Mhm.
and always feeling like I have more to do to measure up. So
Mhm.
the moment by moment for me is
Mm.
it's like all the moments are like, I'm afraid of every moment. I've come a long way from that.
Yes.
But the moment by moment for me is being afraid of every moment and
Uh-huh.
figuring out how can I, in one moment, at least try to do something different from what my reality is.
Yeah.
How do I
Well,
find those moments, yeah, where I can just shine despite all of the
yes.
fears?
Well, what I remember of you when we first met, I remember you being very shy, right?
Absolutely.
Kind, brilliant. You know what I mean? It's like you didn't take credit for things, but you could see, primarily because Bidemy, she would say, no, that's Remy. No, she would give you your props and she would, without her, I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that, and it was very clear that you were an important part of that team. And your ability to communicate and write the way you did was exceptional. And then when we had the opportunity, when you came to the States, I was elated that you were here because I knew this woman with all this talent and ability. And I've actually seen you just blossom, like from there to who you are today. And I think we have to be kind to ourselves, right? Because our upbringing, how we take in information, the authorities in our lives,
Yes.
all make that impact on us. And then it's when we kind of get out into the world and we don't have what I call the checkpoints, what my mama said, what my grandma said, or what my boss might have said to me, that we're starting to make different decisions more or less with our eyes and our heart open. We're coming into this space to really knowing who we are rather than who people think we should be or where we fit into our families. Like in my case, I am the youngest of 13 of my father's children and 5 of my mother's children.
Oh,
So
wow.
on both of those, every interaction that I'm having within my family structure, with exception of being the 2 eldest, my sister was the eldest granddaughter, I was the next, and there were a few behind us, that shifted that dynamic, right? But for the most part, I was the youngest of all my family members, right? And that position in the family will create one of 2 things. I think you'll become either maybe more shy, living behind everybody, or you're going to become more outgoing because you're living behind everybody and you want to be seen. You want to be known that you're a part of this, right? So that part of your journey starts to pull you forward. And I think for me, my personality, my the energy that I have, and I've always had this amazing energy just in my being, right? And how I show up in the world. So, but yeah, I think all of those things are a part. And as we mature, we learn how to navigate our lives in a way that's more comfortable and authentic for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's what my experience has been. Just trying to figure out how do I find my way, like my
Mm-hmm.
unique way of doing things, even with all of the questions in my head, and not try to measure to maybe someone else's standard, but figure out how does it work for me. I love that thought. But you mentioned something about like the birth order and how
Yeah.
being the youngest child, I'm also the youngest child. And
Mm.
obviously I I went the I'm shy and
Right.
afraid. I'm behind
Yeah.
everyone kind of route. And I guess my question is, and my experience with that was, and being an introvert, and of course, not having the language for it at the time growing up, but knowing that, I'm like shy and reserved, and having everyone tell me, you need to come
Mm-hmm.
out more, you need to come out of your shell, and making those comments. I'm curious, did you ever get oh, you're too bold, or you're too
Oh,
confident comments on your side?
absolutely. Absolutely. It comes with the territory because it's like there was a post recently of a young lady said, if you're the person that, on your report cards, you talk too much or you do this too much, you do that too much, what are you now?
Mm,
Right? And she
mm,
wrote, I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, I'm a communicator, I'm a
mm.
marketing person. And all of these were the same spaces in which I delved. And I think
Yeah.
that you have to understand most of us, and depending on when you're raised and where you're raised, right? And where you're from, like in your environment, it's more don't be too everybody, don't show yourself too much. Everybody trying to make an equal plane
Yeah.
or genders are greater than others. In my
Mhm.
case, when you're growing up in elementary school and different things, and they're trying to manage us and they're trying to, guide us in a way, and everybody needs to be quiet, everybody needs to raise their hand, everybody goes to the restroom at the same
Mhm.
time, and all of those things. And I was, frankly, I would have to say I was probably a nonconformist,
I'm
but
surprised.
not disrespectful.
Oh,
I was a
okay. Okay.
very respectful person. My mom actually said to me, "You were a very respectable child and a very respectable daughter, even until today, right?
Mm,
Just that love and that nurturing and that care." But I always knew that something's not right with this system. I don't know. It's just not right. And whatever I can do, I was a person that stood up for the underdog. You
mm.
couldn't say anything to someone in my presence. You couldn't try to attack or I'm not fighting, but I will try to negotiate a win-win. Right? And
I
so
love
I
that.
had all of those personality traits at a very young age, and they just started to develop into leadership traits as I got older. But one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had in my life that I think was a foundation, a stepping stone that helped to navigate or to create this versatility in my life. I was 6 years old. A woman walks into our church and she is running for state representative. This is around 1971 or so, and I'm around five, maybe six, going on seven. I'm in the choir that day. This is what's so important. I'm in the choir. It's a Children's Day thing, and I see her walking in. She's got this white suit on, and I've never seen anything like it in a Black woman that kind of looked like me. I'd never seen like an image of myself. Like, this is what I'm going to be like when I grow up, right?
I love it.
And when I saw, I said, I have to know that woman. She gets to the podium, she starts to speak, and I said, I've got to do that. This is who I am, right? And I've got to meet that woman. So she implores upon the church to support her in her election. And I mean, I'm telling you, with like weeks, I am bugging my mother and said, I need to go and meet this woman. The woman that came to church, I need to go meet that woman. I'm supposed to work with that woman. I'm supposed to be in relationship with that woman. My mom's like, girl, gone. This woman is trying to do what she's doing. And do you know that woman moved her headquarters, her campaign headquarters, down the block from my home, which I could walk to. I could walk to. The only reason why I didn't, because it was across a busy street, and I asked my mom, you have to take me. I'm just walking up there on my own. My mother takes me to see that woman. And I remember walking into her headquarters. It was in an old bank in our community, right? And I walk in and I see her, and she is larger than life. She is so, I'm thinking, whoa, this is like amazing. I walk right up to her and I look at her and I said, I have to work with you. She said, what? Who is this? I said, no, I have to work with you. I'm going to come here every day after school. Don't you worry about me. You won't have to correct me. You won't have to spank me. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to work to get you elected. She looked at my mother. She said, what is this? Right? And she said, I was 6 or 7 years old. I was born in 65. So seven. I was first grade to second grade. And I told her, I said, I will come in here and do this, whatever I need to do, but I have to be here every day. So literally, this was my first interaction, and that woman is still in the state representative she's a state representative of Texas, and this is 52 years later, right? Oh my God. And she became my godmother. That then, from there, I worked every election until I was a senior in high school. She brought me to the state capitol to be a page. She introduced me to other state representatives and senators in that environment. And from that one thing, she taught me so many things, right? She was the first person I ever went out to dinner with other adults in a like 5-star restaurant that I had to have the napkin, 4-course meal, all of this. And she was teaching me how to do these things, right? She taught me how to communicate confidently with senators and speakers of the House and all this stuff. I was just a page. I was in 7th grade. And I still have the picture of me as an honorary page. It's in 7th grade, dressed in my cute little plaid outfit. I mean, it was amazing. And so I had so many of these moments in my life. And another lesson that I learned about confidence, being in that environment, I was in the state capitol. I got on an elevator with her and a senator, a state senator, right? Got on that elevator and I was standing there. She was standing and he was standing on the side. And I recognized in the conversation where he made a mistake in communicating with me, right? Is he was talking to me and he was speaking to me in a way that was above my level of understanding. And it taught me something that I talked to her about later. And I said, I think it's really the responsibility of people, of adults, you have to pay attention to people you're talking to And it's your responsibility, if you're in presence with someone else and they're not on your level, to communicate at their level. And he just didn't do that. That's what I told her. I was in 7th grade. And I learned from that, even as I continue to move forward, that that would be my responsibility as well.
Yes.
And so it didn't impact my confidence, but it taught me that lesson that I don't have to try to figure like, I know this. The person that I'm with, and if they're far more advanced than I am, it's their responsibility. And so I don't know. That helped me along the way.
Oh my God, I love that story. What I take from that as someone who has always struggled with speaking up and showing up is overcome that, whatever that initial, whatever is holding you back is, and just take that step, because you never know just a cascade of events that can come from that. Look at all that you were able to do just by saying, I gotta meet this woman. And how many moments like that do we miss because we overthink it and say, they're not going to want to talk to me. Like, even as adults, we have these conversations going on in our heads. And I certainly have that all the time. There are things that I definitely have talked myself out of because I felt it's not right, or I can't do that, or it's going to look, or I'm afraid of how I would look to the person and all of that. That's an amazing story. I love that.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned the connection, the conversation that you had with that man who could not really speak at your level, what it reminds me of about you is that I love the fact that you are always very open about conversations and maybe things that, I should say, learning. Like there's nothing, I feel like there's nothing that is too big or too little for you to like, I'm figuring this out. I want to know that. And the person on the other side could be way younger than you are, could have way less experience than you have, technically in every way, but you still like, I want to talk to you. I want to learn. I'm like, that blows my mind, because I feel like a lot of people will find it difficult to cross that line. And sometimes we let ego get in the way, of the things that we really need to do or learn. And speaking of ego, and having been in that environment where you are given so much opportunity and people who are, giving you a hand up to say, come learn this. Has it ever been difficult for you to receive guidance and advice?
I am a life learner, number one. I'm a sponge. If you got something you want to give, let's talk about it, right? I'm like looking for it. But let me approach that ego question in a different way. Have I ever been a person that's operated in a situation out of ego, which can be misconstrued as confidence, right? There's a fine line between ego and confidence, right? Confidence is interesting in that I am assured that I can stand in this space and be who I am, right? Ego is a little bit different. When I was a senior in high school, I ran for student body president. I had held many positions. I had been the president of the junior class, the 10th grade, and just had this pattern of leadership. And I remember the gentleman, his name was Vincent. I don't remember his last name, but Vincent was not a leader in these spaces. He played ball. He was just not typical, right? And then our senior year, he decided he would run for president. He wasn't a very good communicator. I was a much better communicator. I allowed my ego, when I went to the podium we were both doing our little, pitch, our campaign pitch, and I allowed my ego to say something. And I looked over at him when I said it, but it was demeaning to him, right? Now, the audience, that was pure ego, right? I was trying to either be cute or whatever, but it wasn't intentional that I wanted to say it, but it was just my body language and how I said it, because what it demonstrated to the audience was I didn't think that Vincent was very smart and he shouldn't be the president. You know what that audience did? They voted for Vincent.
Oh my God.
Although I felt like I was a shoo-in, because I had not only proven my commitment to us being better and being a leader in our school through all the things that I was a part of, right? But I knew in that moment when I did it, I had lost that election. I just knew it. This was over, you know? And so when we think about ego, and yes, I've been egotistical many, many times in my life. And I could remember some of those experiences where I was posing as if I was confident, but I wasn't confident in that, in the way of that authentic confidence. I was allowing that ego to push me out even further than I was more comfortable with.
That's inspired. You mentioned something right now, like you were posing.
Yes.
As confidence when you were. Let me dig a little deep into that.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me take it from an angle. I want to read in your book, Woman Act Now, you talk about the concept of developing self-confidence, building inner confidence. I want to read a paragraph from that really spoke to me. What does it mean to have confidence? Having confidence means trusting in your own abilities, your beliefs and talents, and being able to project poise effectively, both in private and in public. Confidence is similar to self-esteem. It is how you feel about yourself. How you feel about yourself will also ultimately affect your confidence. It'll help you or hurt you. We attain confidence through our personal experiences, culture, parents, and familial influences, friends, and education. We demonstrate confidence through the ability to decipher information that we learn and convert it into meaningful and successful outcomes. So I do have a question here, and it might sound like a weird question because this speaks to me because my experience has been it's taken the passage of time, like painful experiences, embarrassment, trial and error to actually build confidence. And I'm still like on the journey, right? It's taken a lot of time. And my question is, Coach, is there a hack? Is there something that could have saved me all these years? Maybe in a moment, you know, the moments that I really needed to shine. I really needed to step out of all of the noise in my head and just take action. But, you know, I just let it go, or I just couldn't stand up to that. Is there something? I don't want to use the word shortcut, but I guess that's what it is. Is there something that could have saved me all these years?
I think there is no shortcut to confidence, right? Self-confidence. I think it comes, and even as some of the things that you read from the book Woman Act Now, when I think about this inner confidence, just like the example I gave about ego, these are the building blocks of confidence, right? It's our painful experiences, and it's also our highs, our winnings. Like when we win at something, and we like winning with Miss Thompson, asking her to work with her in her campaign at 6, kept me in a relationship with her until today. Like literally today, she is a key person of my life. We are family, and we've gone through many things. So that's a building block. So I believe every time that we engage, oftentimes when it comes to confidence, right? I don't measure it by my last failure. You know what I'm saying? I don't measure it by my last success. I measure my confidence about in that situation, because confidence is situational. You're not going to respond the same way every single time. If you walk into a situation, right, the most important thing is you should know yourself. You should know that if you need a certain level of preparation, prepare. If you're not the person that can talk off the cuff, prepare yourself, right? Absolutely. Write your notes. Be willing to communicate to the audience, or when I say audience, don't think a lot of people. I'm talking me and you, we're talking. Yeah. And it's so easy if people would say, you know, I want to get this right, right? And for our meeting today, I wrote down a few of my points. And if you don't mind me sharing them, so you don't feel uncomfortable looking at your notes, right? Because when you feel uncomfortable and you're not authentic, that look, I can't remember all this stuff, and this is so important to me that I need my notes, and I want to share that with you. That look how my confidence changed, right? Versus me sitting on there trying to, well, you know, because you're going to come off with a lack of confidence. And so I
Absolutely.
believe 100% that confidence is situational. It's how you prepare for those moments that will determine how you will excel in them, right? And then you'll look back and say, I felt really confident. Well, you felt really confident because you prepared yourself. And this goes all the way through relationships. You could be in a situation with your significant other, your spouse, or whatever the case, and you want to talk about something, but you haven't prepared yourself. And preparation doesn't mean I'm going to just say, these are my 3 things that I want to talk about. Preparation is, well, these are my 3 things I want to talk about, but let me see what the other person might think. If this were them telling me, how would they feel? What might they be thinking? What might they be experiencing? Now we're starting to build our confidence for that conversation, because now I'm being thoughtful about what's important. I'm going to be thoughtful how I'm going to communicate it, and I'm going to give it a chance to figure out how that person is experiencing this. Empathy, right? Because if you just take for a moment and say, oh, I don't know if I would say that like that. Now you're building the confidence that you need for that particular situation. And it goes to our professional lives, whether you're calling on a client. Have you done the work? Have you looked at the LinkedIn page? Have you looked at the last post that they posted? Have you just taken time to prepare yourself so you can be what? More confident in that situation. And most of us, as we started this conversation, we lack confidence because it's connected to fear. And fear is also connected to a lack of what? Preparation for something. You don't have fear when you learn how to do things. You don't have fear when you try it one time. Second time, you just jump in. You know, you're like, that wasn't so bad. And I think that we have been, as women, we have been fed a terminology to help us explain whatever emotions or whatever we think people are thinking about us. And I'm not saying that's an incorrect language, but I'm also saying that it's a language that others have defined for us that we're trying to meet. When we show up authentically, it's just who we are. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't.
I love it, Coach. I absolutely love it. You mentioned something that I really want to touch on, the connection between empathy and confidence. Because in that example that you gave, you want to show up and talk with your spouse or somebody about something. You have your 3 points. But then you've gone beyond, this is what I want to talk about. You've gone beyond, how might they receive it? And how can we have a dialogue, a conversation, which will actually result in something meaningful? Instead of, this is what I want to talk about. And then they come up with all sorts of things that you never envisaged that could happen, or you never really thought it through. And now you're like, now I feel terrible about this. And that's going to further affect your confidence because you didn't take time to really look at it from that person's perspective. And also, I've learned over time, and I heard this, I can't remember where, almost like fear, it's a kind of pride, so to speak. Yeah, because you are so focused on yourself. You're focused on what people are thinking about you. You're focused on what you are thinking. You're not looking at things from other people's perspective that will give you a rounded view of life. And that also helps you be more confident.
Yes.
I absolutely love that.
I'm definitely of the mindset, and I do this often, you know, if I am in a situation with someone, I take time to think about it. And I face challenges just like everyone else, right? I face challenges in business. I face challenges in negotiating a proper and worthy contract for myself, right? And we liken those things to either confident, or can you stand up for yourself? Are you worthy of this? You know, can you raise your deserved level? Can you ask for the order? These are areas that when we think about confidence, are they really confident, or are we afraid of rejection? Right. And I learned long ago when I was in sales is that, you know, you got to figure out those objections. Right. And that's exactly what I just shared in those 3 points. And when we talk about empathy really makes us consider a different pathway of thought. You know what I'm saying? When you think about a situation, you're coming in your emotions, your beliefs, your feelings, your thoughts. They shape your emotions, and you then take actions. And that is the reptilian brain that just responds to things. A higher level of thought, or a higher level of maturity is a better word, is that, yes, I feel this way, but I need to pause for a minute and ask the question. If someone came to me and they were telling me as their best friend, this is what they were experiencing, what would it feel like? What would it sound like? And I think if we start to do that, we don't talk to our best friends in any type of way. Like if it's something we're really concerned about, we're sensitive, we're considerate. You know why? Because you value the relationship with that friend. You're more interested in the outcome of maintaining the relationship rather than satisfying yourself in that moment.
Yeah, I love it. All right. You mentioned practice, and I want to go back to that a little bit because I have some stories that I want to share that has really changed the way that I view things by practicing these principles myself. So you mentioned talking about practice. Like if something is important to you and you want to excel at it, you practice, you spend time to consider, to pay attention. And then you give the example about the notes, like you look at your notes so that you can really follow through on what you wanted to do. And I remember when I was doing my master's program, I remember having those classes where we would have to do presentations, and I was always terrified by those presentations because I'm like, I gotta stand in front of everybody and say all these things, and I don't know, so I decided, okay, I'm just gonna practice, right? The first one, and keep in mind, this was my first time in the US. Like I had just landed in the US. I was fresh off the boat. I was green. It was like culture shock coming at me. Like it was difficult, but I was like, I have to do this. I have to excel, and I've always been like an overachiever. Like I want to excel. So I'm like, okay, how do I tackle this? And I thought, all right, I'm just going to go and, I'm just going to write out my thoughts, everything that, my notes that I want to share, and I'm going to practice it. And I will sit in front of my computer and I will practice, and I will record myself practicing, and I will record like, I don't know, 10, 15 takes. And by the time I've done that many takes, like I know what I'm talking about, right? I have it down. And I remember in class that day, everyone did their presentations, and the professor asked me, she was like, did you practice that? And my shoulders kind of fell because I thought, oh, I got caught because I had this feeling that maybe if I'm so good at, what I'm doing, I shouldn't have to put effort into it, And I was like, yes, I did. She was like, that's amazing. And she turned to the class and was like, I tell you, you need to practice. If you practice, I know you've practiced. You might feel like, yeah, I'm a good speaker, I know what I'm talking about. But if you don't practice, it doesn't come across as put together, like a presentation that you've really given a lot of thought to. And I was like, oh, because I was expecting something else, So that really taught me, okay, it's not wrong to take time to practice. It doesn't mean that I'm not good at what I'm doing because I take extra time to practice. And that really helped me. And another sort of like a flip side of the coin, when I was working, I remember I was working this job in digital marketing, and I felt like a fish out of water in that job. Like I could not, I could not thrive for whatever reason. I thought I guess that's when I realized that I don't like social media marketing from like a business or a corporate perspective. Like if I'm having to do it for a business or to just, I just don't like it. And that was hard for me because I could not thrive. It was so difficult to figure out how do I show up because I'm not really excited about the things that we're talking about. I don't love analytics. I don't like numbers, like all of those things just like over my head. And I had to ask myself, if this is the only choice that I have, I would have to step up and do something, right? But do I have a different can I just come up with a different reality for myself? And because that situation really affected my confidence, I had to step back and like, okay, what are my options and how can I find myself in a space where I can thrive doing the things that I love to do? And sometimes it feels like a failure to me. Like because I couldn't thrive in that space. And I guess my question to you is, I don't know if I'm looking for some sort of validation for my decision, but was that a failure? The fact that I could not thrive in that environment, I couldn't do the thing that I did for class and found a way to still shine and thrive and do my best in that situation?
It actually sounds like a revelation.
How so?
It sounds like a revelation to you in knowing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And those things aren't failures when you make a decision, right? You made a decision to stick or quit. And sometimes that's the best decision that you can make, is knowing when to quit and knowing when to stick. And in this situation, the value of what brought joy to you was probably greater than the paycheck you were getting, the security that you were getting, and giving yourself a chance to try what you're better at. And you're still using similar tools, but you're just thriving because the energy of maybe the content, maybe the environment, maybe your freedom is giving you something different. So I don't see those as failures. Actually, I see them as great successes because you're in touch with yourself and say, this isn't working for me. And most of us would be more afraid to make that decision based on giving money, giving position, giving how you look to other people as a more important reason for staying. And I think you had the revelation. This is not for me, and I need to make this decision, and created an alternative path for yourself.
I love it. Well, to set the record straight, I don't think I was bold enough to take that step. I lost that job, like I was let go. So I'm glad I was let go.
They fired you?
Yes. Well, not fired, because they had, I don't know, something happened and, they just had to downsize.
So now, now this is a different conversation.
Yes.
The way you put it, it sounded different. But now that it all culminated in your being let go, now I understand why you asked the question. Is that failure? It's connected to failure. It isn't failure in the fact that you have failed, but because of the culminating event, it can very much feel like failure. And you'll talk they kind of did they let me go because they had to cut back, or did they let me go because I didn't really like this and I really wasn't doing the best or excelling at it? And that's a decision that you're really going to have to make yourself so you can put it to bed. Did you get fired in the name of being letting go because you were not effective at your job?
Well, I don't think that was it, to be honest. And I'm not trying to be whatever here. I moved roles a little bit because I started to do graphic design in that same company. And I love that better. But the company just downsized. I think they lost a big client, and that was a huge.
Okay, so now let me re-ask the question.
All right, I love this.
So the question is, were you successful at that job?
You guys, I'm getting coached live on my podcast, and I am absolutely loving it. I think I'm one of those people who just loves to be psychoanalyzed. Well, join us for part 2 of my conversation with Coach Anna. You don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy this conversation, please take a moment to follow or subscribe to the podcast. I'd also love your feedback on this episode. You can scroll down on your app and click write a review. I'd love to read your takeaways from this conversation. As always, don't forget to take courage, trust God, and go pursue your big ideas. See you next time. The Driven Introvert is produced by shepack.com and Remy Roy. Want to ask a question or share a comment on a future episode? Click on the link in the show notes to record your question in a voicemail.